I came out of football, knew right away I wanted to get my body in order. What I realized was my mind was still a f***ing mess and my heart was still a mess. I was still living in chaos and using any escape valve I could to get out of the moment, to escape myself, to escape my reality, the discomfort of being me. Whether that was alcohol or cannabis or lifting weights or whatever it was. I was like scrolling Instagram, anything I could do. And one day all the escape valves just stopped working.
Eben Britton is a former NFL offensive lineman turned yogi, healer, and podcast host. After a 6-year NFL career, he spent the last decade transforming pain into purpose. In this conversation, Eben reveals exactly how challenging experiences can be used to fuel authentic transformation.
My brother was going to this men's meeting, this men's Al-Anon meeting, and I said, why don't you just come with me and see how it goes? At that point, I was totally surrendered. I was just like, God, give me something. I need some relief. I went to this men's meeting and walked in there just cloaked in darkness, black cloud, and the lead speaker started talking about his childhood. I just burst into tears and I felt like I could breathe for the first time in maybe my whole life.
Even after Eben got on his healing journey, he discovered he was still running from the very teacher that rock bottom was trying to show him.
Back then, when I thought I was on top of the mountain, I was still living under this illusion that I was getting somewhere, that something was going to happen. And what my journey as of late has shown me is getting out of that illusion and into the moment by moment process of being and living and finding the divine in the moment, finding the divine in the breath by breath process of being a human being.
Eben shares how trust and faith can get you on track to the life you're meant to be living.
There's a lot of faith involved. It's being the fool, man. You're blissfully just head tilted to the warmth and the light of the sun, walking on the edge of the cliff. Your next step might be right over the edge, but are you going to walk on air? You might. You have to trust. You have to have faith.
Before we get into this conversation, I want to ask you to join this amazing community of consciousness explorers. This whole idea of pursuing expanded consciousness and the boundaries of human potential while living a modern life is relatively new, which is why we interview revered masters, teachers, experts, and practitioners to help you on your own journey. To stay up to date on the latest conversations, simply click subscribe below and you'll be notified each time a new episode comes out. I am so grateful for all of your support and comments. I love reading them. Now let's dive into this conversation. Eben, what's up, brother?
Hey, man. Great to be here.
It's great to have you here, man. It's great to be amongst another Briton.
Yeah.
Isn't, my aunt or something like that.
Same, dude. Same.
I really wish, one of the things that came up for me as I was preparing for this is I remember when I got on my consciousness journey, and we didn't really talk about my background. I was a college football player as well. I just remember looking around and being like, I don't know any guys that kind of look like me that are doing this. I don't, everybody's like an old guy who's been a spiritual teacher his whole life. There wasn't a lot of archetypes for me to relate to. And let me just say, I think it's really awesome that all the things that you put out and created, and maybe to frame this up to give people a little bit more background on you. When did your spiritual journey and conscious journey really start to get serious?
I came out of my football career in 2014. I was in the NFL for 6 years. And was done playing last season was 2014, and moved my family from Chicago back to LA. My wife at the time, now ex-wife, was from Los Angeles area as well. I grew up in Burbank. I was born in New York City. Lived in Brooklyn till I was 10, but kind of formative years were in Burbank, middle school, high school. So that felt like home. LA always felt like home. Felt like a creative capital of the universe, LA is definitely a place where you can, at least at the time, and my understanding of it always, and this has changed over the years, especially through COVID. But LA always felt like an incredible place to be an artist. There's a lot of opportunity. It's a place where you can really express yourself and grow, and a spiritual mecca for sure. So felt only right to move back to LA after my football career and kind of set up shop, see what was next. Um, and the journey, I came out of football, knew right away I wanted to get my body in order. I'd had a number of surgeries, concussions, you name it, the laundry list of injuries, shoulder, back surgery. Uh, Left the NFL at 328 pounds. It's
Big boy.
it's like I'm done being this fucking big. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And it's hard, it's hard to be that big. So one of the first things I thought was, I'm ready to be lean and mean and, get down to like 250, which I did slowly but surely. Not that slowly, actually. A couple years probably it took. Really disciplined with ketogenic diet and, training, and all of that stuff was good. The reason I bring that up is I got my body in order, but what I realized was my mind was still a fucking mess and my heart was still a mess. I was still living in chaos and using any escape valve I could get to get out of the moment, to escape myself, to escape my reality, the discomfort of being me. Whether that was alcohol or cannabis or porn or fucking lifting weights or whatever it was, I was like scrolling Instagram, anything I could do, I would hit that escape valve. And one day all the escape valves just stopped working. The escape valves became gateways to the reality that I was choosing, if that makes sense. They became this screaming realization of, I'm not addressing the real issues here, which are somewhere deep down inside that I really wasn't in touch with at the time. Now, I should give some context. I come from a family of alcoholics and addicts, and my mom had a lot of years in recovery and 12-step programs, and my aunt had a lot of recovery in 12-step program. My brother had just kind of started his journey into 12-step programs. So my whole life is coming crashing down on top of me. My ex-wife and I are just like, it's felt like really a difficult time, a lot of fighting, mostly because I just didn't know how to relate. I had no idea how to be in relationship with myself, let alone anybody else. We had now she's 13, our amazing daughter, but at the time, she was a little kid. And, I got to this point where I just couldn't stand who I was looking at in the mirror anymore. And so that culminated in a fight with my wife where I'm yelling into the phone, I'm going to kill myself or I'm going to kill somebody. And I'm driving to work. I'm driving to Chatsworth. Chatsworth, if anybody's familiar, it's like at the time, it was like the porn capital of the world. I was driving out there to this office where I'd started a CBD company with these people. It's a whole other podcast. And, I get in there, I walk into the office, and the sweet, 23-year-old girl who ran the front desk, she's like, "Hi, Eben." And I was like, just sneered at her. And I'm the kind of guy, if I'm not in a good mood, everybody can tell. My energy I'll fucking decimate a room. I can lift it up. I can make everybody feel really positive and good and inspired, and I can fucking totally demolish it too. And whatever the interaction was with her, I remember her just having this look on her face like she was just totally flattened and scared. And I went into my office and I was like, what am I doing? You know, what's going on here? I was just like, I was just suffocating. And not long after I sat down, I got a call from my mom. 'Cause God bless her, you know, my wife had called her and just said, I don't know what to do. Like, Eb's really struggling. I don't know, like, how to help him. He seems like, I just don't know what to do. So my mom called me up and she said, Eb, how you doing? And I was like, you know, could barely talk. She's like, why don't you come over for dinner? I was like, all right. So it felt like an easy starting point, you know, and went to dinner with my mom, my aunt, and my brother that night. And they just said, look, this is a family disease that we come from. And there are tools for dealing with this stuff. And my brother was going to this men's meeting, this men's Al-Anon meeting. And he said, why don't you just come with me? It's on Friday morning. And just check it out. Just see how it goes. And, you know, so at that point, I was totally surrendered. I was just like, God, give me something. I need some relief. I have no idea where to go, how to be, who I am, anything. So I went to this men's meeting and walked in there just cloaked in shit, darkness, black cloud, whatever you want to call it, however you want to articulate it. It was all of that, sat down. And the lead speaker started talking about his childhood. And the way he was talking about it just felt like he was talking about my life, my childhood, you know, the things he dealt with, trying to make sure his little brother was safe in this chaotic environment. And I was like, holy shit. I just burst into tears. I spent the next hour just crying. And it was like, you know, the clouds parted, a beam of sunlight came through, and I felt like I could breathe for the first time in maybe my whole life. And so that was really just the beginning of the journey, you know. That was the beginning of learning how to live in a new way. And it started with getting this context around where I'd come from, being from a family of alcoholics and addicts, and which is it's a very limiting label to slap on it because you think it's just you're surrounded by fall down drunks, and it's not really like that. You know, it's a very specific psychological framework that you come up in that I think a lot of people spend a lot of time in and don't even realize it, and are maybe adverse to something like a 12-step program because they go, oh, that's for alcoholics, or that's AA, or that's Al-Anon, that's not me. When it's really a lot, it's much more than that, you know. It's an oversimplification for something that is, I think, in our society, a pretty ubiquitous way of relating. And so that was the beginning of the journey, man. I ended up in therapy. In therapy, my therapist turned me on to meditation. I started meditating. Been meditating every day for, you know, the last 8 years. Got connected to 2 very important mentors who brought me to my first, you know, plant medicine ceremonies, experiences with ayahuasca and kambo, and it just kind of, you know, started gaining momentum, and it was all just this interesting experience of being turned back to myself, learning how to go inward, learning what that meant, what that looked like, learning about who I was, what I am, who I want to be, what I want to align myself to, the decisions I'm making, the thoughts I'm giving energy to, brought me back to yoga. You know, my mom is a very powerful healer, somatic body worker, yogini. I mean, she was taking my brother and I to yoga when I was 10. You know, that was
You had the seeds.
yeah, the seeds were there, man, you know. And my dad is also, you know, my dad was a D1 athlete and has his own spiritual framework, I would say, that's been highly influential in my life. And you know, and it's taken many forms, man, and it's been an interesting ride, to say the least, you know. Felt like I had really climbed out and up to the top of a pretty high mountain around 21, 22, and then went through a divorce, which was simultaneously miraculous in how, you know, amicable and cooperative it's been, and it was really difficult. You know, you spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, there's a lot of love and life between you and another person, and it's like inevitably there's going to be a lot to untangle there. So you know, around 22, went through beginning of 22, we got our divorce, and then, you know, a whole new thing started, a whole new journey started, and went back into the cave, definitely, like, you know, had to do some regrouping for a couple of years, and which led to, you know, me ending up in a treatment center, honestly, end of 24, October, because I just really, I had hit I had hit critical mass on some behaviors and patterns that just weren't working for me anymore, namely my use of cannabis and kratom, and, you know, things that, you know, nobody would look at me and go, Eb, you're a drug addict, you need help. You know, it was like, this was all just internal me going, fuck, like these things I've been doing have replaced my desire for living, essentially, you know, and everything I'm doing now is just like checking a box. That's what my life kind of felt like it became. And I was just dying to figure out, like, I lost total sense of my purpose and what I was interested in, and all, and these substances had just sort of replaced that. And I know there's a lot in between there that I'm leaving out, but, you know, just to kind of give a gist of the journey that I've been on. And so, you know, spending 30 days in a treatment center, which, you know, by the grace of God and my own higher being, I would say I had the willpower to pick up the phone and ask for help and get myself to that treatment center, and spend 30 days, you know, deep in therapy, group therapy, trauma education, all of this stuff, and really was able to get to the bottom of some things that had never I had never touched, you know, since being on the path of, you know, reconciliation, self-realization, whatever you want to call it, you know, personal excavation. Like, these were things that I hadn't yet had the ability to see clearly. And finally, you know, in that space, having, you know, surrounded myself with really loving and supportive people, and getting to a place where I was safe and secure enough to look at some things that were like the fucking axiomatic, you know, the prime inciter for all the violence I had caused to myself and my relationships throughout my life, you know. And it was a really powerful and important thing for me. And it's been an interesting journey, you know, because brought me tons of clarity. At first it was like, fuck this, you know, sobriety thing. Like, why are we doing this? This is dumb. Like, life's short, might as well enjoy it, you know? But slowly but surely, you know, you're gathering momentum and you're like, oh, I see the fruits of this, you know, and starting to see the fruits of it little by little. And having made that commitment to myself, it's like, okay, well, there's no going back because we know that's a dead end road over there, you know, to go that way. And not that I think there's anything wrong with substances. I mean, I've talked about it on that, you know, that pod coming back to. I recognize in myself, I have a real gravitation towards altered states of consciousness. Like, it's in my fucking astrological chart, you know. It's like I enjoy experiencing and playing in other realms of consciousness. And so, how do I do that while I'm honoring this new path that I'm on? Which I find in meditation, breath work, exercise, going out into nature, getting myself on back on the field, like we talked about earlier, which for me is like podcasting. It's my men's group. It's, you know, working with people, connecting with people, getting out there and, you know, being in contact with other human beings where I have a sense of accountability to other people, you know, because for me, it's not, if I have too much time in the cave in isolation, which I also enjoy solitude, I enjoy being alone, you know. However, it's important for me, I recognize, to get out there, share my experience, my message in the various ways that emerges, teaching yoga, breath work, you know, facilitating a men's group, doing my podcast, etc., that keeps this momentum going in the direction of living in my purpose in a way where, you know, there's stakes to it, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. You know, one of the things that strikes me about what you just shared is, first off, I think there's a lot of people that are getting the crap kicked out of them right now. Like, they're having all their stuff brought up. You know, they just got to some place like you did in 2021, 2022. We're like, I'm good. You know, I'm like high on the mountain. I'm feeling pretty good about myself every
Yeah.
day. And then it's like, boom.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's happening for a lot of people right now, myself included. How do you relate to that? You know, these kind of major bumps in the road that come up when you're on this path. Let's talk about bringing your whole self to work. If you're like many executives, including myself at one point, you might be living a double life. You have your personal career, and then you have your personal growth journey. Conscious Talent is changing that as the world's first executive talent firm specializing in connecting leaders and companies who embrace inner work. Imagine finding job opportunities where your contemplative practice, latest retreat experience, and commitment to your personal evolution are seen as strengths, not secrets. What if you actually felt like your career supported this aspect of your life versus competed with it? Conscious Talent is building a community of leaders and companies who are committed to both combining professional excellence with personal transformation. If you're ready to merge your two worlds with a fully aligned career, join the movement at conscioustalent.com. Here you can sign up for our talent collective to stay on top of future opportunities or find your next transformative team member.
You know, that's a great question. And one of the things that's come up, because, you know, during my time in the cave, as it were, I would look back and I'd go, God, man, I was on top of the mountain. What the fuck happened? Like, what happened, dude? And what I realized was, back then, when I thought I was on top of the mountain, I was still living under this illusion that I was getting somewhere, that something was going to happen, you know? And it's funny to think about, like, what did I think was going to happen? I don't know. I was going to dissolve into light and just become one with everything, or, you know, I was going to be on the throne in white robes with followers kissing my feet. I don't really know, like, what that was, but I was living under this illusion, this perpetual illusion that, like, we were getting somewhere else, you know? And what, my journey as of late has shown me is getting out of that illusion and into the moment by moment process of being and living and finding the divine in the moment, finding the divine in the breath by breath process of being a human being. I think that a lot of it has to do with this cultural, societal, fucking social media driven conditioning that says you've got to get somewhere. There's a finish line, there's a mountaintop, there's somewhere that we're all going that's going to be the place where we find God or Elysium or whatever the thing is we think that's going to be there. And then what is it? I mean, you hear it all the time. You talk to any of the greatest athletes in the world, the greatest artists in the world, whoever, anyone who's ever achieved anything. You graduated from, high school, college, you've gotten the diploma, you got the promotion, you got the car, you got the trophy, whatever it is, no matter what it is, you wake up the next day and life goes on, and everybody's looking at you like, now what? And somewhere inside of you is going, now what? And if you can get to a place, like I've really just made it my practice to enjoy all of it and not get sucked into this illusion of when I get there, it's going to be X. And rather, it's all here now, dude. Like anything that I'm looking for is happening right here, right now. There's nothing over there. If I'm getting anywhere, actually, this was where this epiphany came for me. It was like, if I'm getting anywhere, the only destination I'm getting to is a clearer and clearer perception of myself, where there are fewer and fewer illusions veiling my perception of reality. And if you can get into that, so it's not so much a getting anywhere, but a clearer and clearer view of what's happening, what is. And that's the perpetual destination that's always emerging, this clearer and clearer view. You're just polishing the crystal little by little, through various means. I mean, I was listening to your pod talking about your new business venture. And I loved it. I loved so much of it. And, there was something you said in there that made me think about this of, business being your dojo, your business, your workplace being your spiritual dojo. That's the motto that I've come to live by. It's like every relationship that we're in is an opportunity to get clearer and closer to God, And it doesn't matter if you're fucking going to the ayahuasca retreats or you're meditating or you're doing breath work. I mean, there's an old lady down in Mississippi somewhere who smokes a pack of cigarettes a day and drinks Diet Cokes and is a fucking sage, has nothing but wisdom to share. So it's like, it doesn't really matter the pathway because it's all the path. Everything in front of you is an opportunity to get clearer and closer to this thing we call reality, whatever that is. And that's really the only place we're ever going. And if you can get out of this idea that when I get there or when I get that idea, you're going to be able to manage the ebbs and flows of life. It's going to keep happening. There's no way to game the system of being a human. I feel like that's...
Don't I know that to be true, dude?
Me too, brother. I've tried my ass off.
Yeah, you can't hide.
I've tried my ass off to fucking game the system. Like, okay, let me just take more mushrooms. That'll fix it. Or let me do more breath work. Or let me, it's like there's no way to see around the corner and get a one up on life. You just can't. So for me, it's really been about getting good with what is, which is fucking difficult, man. It's not easy.
I agree.
It's not, this isn't, this isn't like something that I can say is just like, yeah, just get good with being bored, It's
Do you ever have the feeling, I mean, maybe in the NFL where you're like, you look back and you're like, and at the time you thought that was really hard, what you were doing. And then you look back now and you look at this stuff that we're talking about and you're like, yo, being good at football was actually easy mode.
totally, man. So, I mean, yeah. It's of course, dude, of course. You always look back on like when you were a kid or yeah, playing football. I was like, dude, I woke up every day and just knew exactly where to be, what to do, how I was going to do it, didn't have to think about anything. And life is just not like that for most of us. You got to get up every day and you got to make it happen. And it was interesting, I was just outside just before I saw you, and there's seemingly a homeless guy there, which I'm fine with. I'm always interested in homeless people. And, he comes up to me and he said, I like your hat. My hat says life is a miracle, which is kind of like a motto that I've come to share through my events and everything I do. And something I believe, life is a fucking miracle. He's like, I like your hat. And he's kind of rambling about he's a poet and he's getting to the point where he's going to ask me for money, and I'm just trying to pay for my parking spot, for the next couple hours. I'm like, dude, I don't have any. I got some coins, like and at that, I think they're euros because of my last trip to Italy. Like, I got a quarter maybe. He's telling me like I've never had a bank account, and the first thought that came to my mind was like, why haven't you had a bank account? And because it's really important that people take accountability for their lives, and I'm not judging this guy. I have no idea. I spent literally 90 seconds here just listening to what he had to say. But most of us, we spend a lot of our lives trying to scapegoat our circumstances onto something else, And if you're a guy, I actually wanted to stop and just have a conversation like, why have you never had a bank account? Like, why is that a choice you make? That's a choice you've made, because of something. I was interested to hear what's your reasoning behind that. Now, that's a choice you've made, which has led you to standing on the sidewalk, talking to people about asking them for money, asking them to give you money to, get you your next meal. And I don't have money. So now you're going to say, you're going to give me the guilt trip of like, yeah, man, I need a miracle. Yeah, me too, brother. We all need a fucking miracle. And at the end of the day, dude, it's on us to make decisions that move us in the direction of the life we want to live. So something in you said, I'm never opening up a bank account, and you made that choice. Okay, here you are living that life. You decided to do that, right? And he seemed like, he had it together. And again, this isn't a judging thing. It's just about understanding and recognizing that we have to be accountable to the life we're living, given the decisions we've decided to make. The choices we've made, the actions we've taken, the thoughts we give energy and attention to. And a lot of people have a hard time doing that. Now, if you can get really honest about that, your life circumstances, if you're living a life right now where you feel resentful, you feel uninterested, you feel like something's missing or lacking, the only thing you can do is start to look at what are the decisions I've made to get myself here, because I have created this reality. I am God and creator of my life as I want it to be, And if you can do that, if you can get really honest about that, man, you've got the power to do whatever the fuck you want to do, but not until you get honest about it, And the honesty is uncomfortable, man.
It is.
When you're getting your ass kicked by the universe, when you're in that chaos, it's like, man, that's a good place to be, because you're becoming fucking acutely aware of the things that need changing. and they're starting to change, whether you like it or not. You lose the job, you lose the relationship. We've all been there, man. You look at your life and you go, whoa, dude, God, this is not what I was asking for. And God's like, what are you talking about? This is exactly what you were asking for, dude. You made decisions that led to this happening. This is you. You're creating this. I'm just here to give you what you want.
I have a very, something that's been big for me over the past year is forgiveness of my parents.
Yeah.
And I think when you get into a lot of this inner work trauma, you start to see where a lot of these ideas came from that weren't serving you. And I had a lot of that, and I had become such a good repressor of anger and certain types of emotions for years that all of that just started to come up and be redirected towards my parents. And I'll never forget, one day my spiritual teacher was like, you set this up, right? Like, you're pissed at your own setup. And there's some, thoughts around cosmology there of like, why do we think our life is the way that it is, and what is karma and all of that. But what I realized, what I came to is, regardless of what you believe about reality and why your life looks like the way it is, it's just a much more empowering way to live, to take responsibility, even for things that you struggle to even see, you could remotely be responsible for, like why my parents were the way they were. If the choice is, I'm going to be pissed at them for something that they did under their best intention, like however many years ago, or I'm going to just kind of take responsibility in some way, like 100% more empowered. To just own that and own it on your side.
Absolutely, man. You have to. Because what are you going to do? Walk around going, my parents fucked me, dude. Get in line, brother.
Yeah.
Whose
parents haven't, man? And we're both parents now. And it's like, I know I'm going to do things, and my daughter is going to be, she's going to be salty at me.
Oh yeah, dude. Of course, man. I think it's, there's a great poet. I think he's Irish poet. Maybe it's Yeats. He just talks about, our parents fuck us up, and it's inevitable. And as parents, we're going to fuck up our children. Like, it's just, even as we try to better manage the situations that we feel our parents didn't do a good job of managing with our kids, there's going to be other things that, we don't do right, or that, fall through the cracks, or, because it's a totally new position of perception from our kids to us and us to them. And, so it's just like, it's an inevitable fact of the matter. And so the solution being, everybody, all of us, at some point, now I don't think that, spiritual bypassing doesn't get us anywhere. I think that's something that anybody who's been on the path of whatever personal evolution, self-realization, whatever you want to call it, this thing of getting clear and reconciling oneself. We can all fall into the trap of, oh, well, that wound, that thing, that doesn't matter because I'm higher than it, or I'm, you can use the spirituality to not deal with the problem at hand, and
definitely have done that.
Oh yeah, of course, dude. I think we've all done that,
It's a rite of passage.
So I think it's necessary and fruitful to understand and heal those wounds and bring context to it and forgiveness, But then, at some point we've got to be willing to let it go, and move on and take accountability for how we're showing up in the world, which is just, to me, it's the ultimate task of this moment of time that we're in, There's a real shift going on. There's a real evolution of humanity, of consciousness happening right now. you probably feel it, whether you're inclined to this type of language or you've done any sort of, spiritual research of your own, or, whatever philosophies you follow, even if you're, a more orthodox religious, on a more orthodox religious bent like Christianity or Judaism, you're feeling these shifts that are taking place. And to me, what it's all about is honesty and truth. And truth has been something that's come up a lot over the last couple weeks, in particular in groups that I'm in and conversations. And, I think in the spiritual community, I don't know how, like, it doesn't totally make sense to me, the spirit, like labeling these things in these ways, but it is what it is, If everything in life was social media and Instagram, you've got like the spiritual club, you've got like, the fitness club,
Right.
uh, this term living in my truth, which I've used and I've encouraged people to follow many times, has evolved for me into living in truth, period. Because we can all do that. When you say living my truth, or this is my truth, depending on where you're at, your truth could be kind of a little bit convoluted, depending on the amount of work you've done,
Always
where
based
you're
on
at,
how polished that mirror is.
Yeah, dude. But if you say living in truth, like going back to that idea of whatever your life looks like, are you content with it? And content meaning you feel good about where it is here and now, or not. Are you feeling resentful? Are you feeling like, why that person me? Or, whatever the thing, whatever way the finger might be pointing, what is the truth of the situation? Okay, your life isn't what you want it to be right here, right now. Okay, well, that's on me. The truth is the decisions I've made, the choices I've made have led me to this moment here. So let me start looking at those decisions and see where I can change direction, And a lot of times the next decision you're led to make is going to be something that leads you into the unknown, or leads you into something that's really uncomfortable, because it's not something you're familiar with necessarily. And yet that's usually the direction you want to go in order to get to where you're looking to get to, So I feel like, truth and honesty are things that, when you take your righteousness out of the picture, you take your need to be right or your need to be validated out of the picture, and you just say, okay, what's happening here and now? You can always look to, okay, this is what's going on. Let me act accordingly from there, rather than, well, my truth is this. And, use the example of you're looking to get a new job, and a big job comes up that you go and interview for, and you're really excited about it, but you don't get the job. Then you're going, well, my truth is I'm the fucking best person for that job. Well, clearly not, because you didn't get the job, They were looking for something else. They didn't think you were qualified, or you were going to give them what they needed to fulfill that role in that job. So what's the truth of the situation? Okay, well, the truth might be that you're really talented in this area. Okay, well, that's not what they were looking for. So maybe you just have to keep, tending to the reality as it's appearing to you, with your ego removed from the situation, so that you can move in the direction of where you're trying to go. I don't know if any of that made sense.
It does. And, I think where a lot of people get caught up, and I'd love to hear you talk through this, is when they feel that pull towards something that does feel like their truth, but everybody around them says, that's a bad idea, or you're a bad person. Like, for example, I know you left LA, you had a 12-year-old daughter there, to come to Texas.
Yeah.
And I could imagine that wasn't just like a no-brainer decision.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have these type of decisions in their lives where there's some type of pull or inner calling that does feel true, but there's conflict on the outside. And I'd be curious how you've found a way to navigate those type of situations.
It's no one knows what's right for you. No one outside of you know what's best for you. And I think all of us are acting in accordance with what we feel is best for us, given the circumstances, given the emotional energies that are moving through us, the pull that we feel in various directions in our lives. Like, nobody can tell you what that looks like and what's best for you. And that can be a really difficult and challenging thing to navigate when, you're feeling really strongly called or drawn to a certain thing, moving out of state, going to take a job, whatever it might be. There's all sorts of things that could arise in. So inevitably, you're going to hear a lot of, people get scared for you, or particularly our parents, people who are close to us. They're going to be like, fuck, dude, you're doing what? I don't know, man. You're going to leave the 6-figure tech job to go and, start a business over here? Like, are you sure? That doesn't make sense logically. And I don't think it's difficult because we live in an age that's really run by the intellect and rationale and logic, and those things fall short a lot of the time when it comes to living life in the pursuit of your highest potential. And for me, in that situation, and I had felt like I needed to get out of LA for a long time. I felt like I was just like, I was in a fucking straitjacket of the culture, needing more space, needing something new, needing a fresh start. And it was a really difficult decision, but making that decision, I was committed to being a father and being in my daughter's life. So what that's looked like is I'm traveling a lot. Like, I'm back and forth to LA frequently, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, for 2-3 month long stints. And that's difficult. It's hard. It's not easy. I wish I could say, I've talked to guys who have done it, have done similar things, and there's no easy way around it. But if it's what you're choosing to do, you've just got to live with, hey, this is going to be difficult. It's going to be hard. It's going to be uncomfortable for a little while. And if that's what you're deciding to do, then you got to just go with it. You got to trust it. For me, it felt vitally important for my well-being, mental and emotional in particular, that I needed to get out into space. I needed more space. I needed solitude. I needed quiet. I needed an opportunity to see where I was at, to work on these things that I've been drawn into, doing events. We do wellness events where, for people, we do yoga and breath work and ice tubs and have great food. And this property that we found gave us this opportunity to do this and do it of our own accord. And then Austin had a lot of friends here. I didn't fight it, but, Austin became a really trendy place to be around COVID,
Oh yeah.
especially coming from LA. So there was a moment where I was like, man,
I'm
fuck
gonna be
that.
one of those guys.
Yeah, all the fucking wackos are moving to Austin. Like, I don't need to be another one. So it was a few years like visiting, hanging out with buddies. I had a really solid group of friends here, guys that I really love and feel like are great brothers, but also people who kind of raise the bar on like what I'm trying to do and who I'm trying to be. And they've got cool things going on. They inspire me. They encourage me. And, one day it just came to me, just this idea was like, you know what, let's just try it for a year, see what happens. And I made that decision in myself. The lease of my apartment in LA was coming to an end in October. This was like August. I was here with my daughter and my girlfriend, visiting friends in the Austin area. And this idea just came up like, let's just try it for a year, see what happens, And said, okay, not going to renew the lease when it ends in October. I have no idea what's next. God, give me the sign. Show me where I'm supposed to go next. Literally a week or two later, I get a call from a woman who is a good friend who teaches yoga at the studio I teach at in Burbank. And she goes, hey, Eb, I'm leaving the country for the next 6 months. Do you know anybody who want to house sit? I'm like, yeah, me. It was like, okay, check that box. I've got a place to live while we find a place in Austin. We had this great house for, through the end of the year at least. It was like, wow, that was taken care of. Okay. So then about a month later, I'm on the phone with a buddy who's been here, good friend. I tell him, hey, man, looking at moving to Austin. He's like, dude, that's amazing. You got to talk to Jenny, who runs this 100-acre yoga ranch out in Wimberley. And she's getting ready to move to California and looking for somebody to take over her property. I was like, what? Okay, yeah, put me in touch with Jenny. Get on the phone with Jenny. Jenny's like, Eb, love this for you. So great. Unfortunately, one of my best friends is already committed. They're going to take it over. They're going to run it. But my girlfriend who lives down the road, she's got a little bit smaller property, but looking for somebody to come in, help her manage it, do retreats. And it's a wonderful property. She's got a yoga barn and all kinds of cool stuff. I was like, what? Okay, great. Get put in touch with her. Her name's Melinda. She's just a doll. It's been so great getting to know her. Get on the phone with Melinda. She's like, yeah, sounds great. Would love to meet. It's about the week before Thanksgiving. We're like, you know what? We'll take a trip, check it out, come visit. We get there. Melinda's just like in everything that we're into. She's like a executive creative coach. She's a musician. She's a psych professor. She's tapped into all this cool shit that I'm interested in. And we go out to dinner, spend the night at the place, wake up the next morning, drinking the coffee, looking out on the land, going, holy shit, how'd this happen, dude? Like, this feels like home. This is where we're supposed to be. Anyway, signed the lease, moved in, I think, beginning of February. And it just, it was like one thing after another, just
You were guided there.
Yeah.
You were guided there.
And, there was a lot of navigating that too in between, like my ex-wife was not interested in that, at all. But I think over the course of the last year and a half, building trust with her and helping her, and really showing up in the relationship with her, in the relationship with my daughter, showing up and building this sense of trust, like I'm not going anywhere, I'm here. And in fact, I'm more available than I've ever been, mentally and emotionally speaking. Like, it's been a process and a journey, and here we are. And it's, the journey continues always, but it's worked out for the best. And I feel like there's no place I'd rather be, at least right now. And I go back and forth and I do the thing, and it's hard. And, all the signs point to this was the right decision to be made,
Yeah. What strikes me about your story is, the surrender and openness that you had, a recognition of a pattern that was that you were being led, right? Like, whoa, crazy free house, whoa, perfect property. And what I've seen is that there comes a point in the understanding when you get on this path where it just becomes too hard to be out of integrity with how life leads you.
Yeah.
Because shit doesn't go well.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't go well. And it might not look as good on paper, but it actually tends to go hell of a lot smoother when you actually align to what you're being presented with.
Well, you know, what you're saying is a really important aspect of it, you know, because we all get those hits, whatever it is, that divine insight, that thought, something that just fucking really lights us up and reminds us about what it means to be alive, right? But we look around and we go, well, fuck, man, that's not my life. Like, how could I do that? How could I make that decision? I don't know, dude, you know? And you find yourself at a crossroads and you get to make a decision, you know? And anything is possible, dude, you know? Anything is fucking possible, truly. If you're willing to take the step and have faith. There's a lot of faith involved, you know. It's being the fool, man. If you're into tarot, it's being the fool. You're blissfully, you know, just head tilted to the warmth and the light of the sun, walking on the edge of the cliff. You know, your next step might be right over the edge, but are you going to walk on air? You might, man. You might. You have to trust. You have to have faith. And that's really difficult. And you know, the decision really comes down to, because that feeling that you get, that insight, that thought, that divine hit, you're driving on the freeway, on the 405, stuck in traffic, boom, that hit comes. And you're like, well, how the fuck am I supposed to do that? How do I get there? I can't, like, where do I even begin? You know, but if you're willing to, little by little, spirit, the universe will show you the way if you start to choose that. If you don't choose it and you go the other way, just tune into what starts to come up, you know? For me, it was the feelings of resisting myself, being in resistance to those signals, to put it plainly, causes resentment, it causes frustration, it causes a bottlenecking of energy, of flow in my life, which then creates problems, you know, because I'm not showing up how I'm supposed to show up. Again, like I said, I'm a big guy to begin with, you know. I walk into a room, people feel my energy. If I'm walking in there and I'm fucking the angry big guy, everybody's going, whoa, bro. It's too much.
Watch
man.
out.
It's too much. You know, I don't want to be that guy. I've been that guy plenty of times. I don't like that. I don't like people being scared of me, you know, which people might be scared of me anyway. But I'm not going to fulfill that perception through my own behavior, presence, energy, etc. You know, I want to be the guy who feels totally whole and complete because I'm following my own inner guidance system. You know, to me, that's what it always comes down to. If I'm feeling on top of the feeling of being on top of the world, or, you know, at the bottom of the valley, the difference is me trusting myself and honoring myself over and over again, you know. And the more I can put money in the bank of trusting myself and following my own inner guidance system, man, the higher I'm flying in a really positive way and moving in the direction of something that feels like progress.
I think I heard you say a quote from one of your favorite books or speakers about it's free to be me or something like that.
Yeah, Bob Proctor. And Bob Proctor got it from another guy, but I'm going to be free. I've got to be me, not the me I think you think I should be. If I'm going to be free, I've got to be me. That's it, man. You know, it's really
Lots of depth to that.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, Bob is amazing.
One question I have for you, and I know I've had my own relationship with this, is I think a lot of people listening are like, all right, so you're really aligned to presence, you're really aligned to what's happening in your body. Like, how do you actually get shit done? There's this balance and tension
Yeah.
of like that, and how do you hold that?
Well, that's a great question. And, I think that for a long time, I felt like a chicken running around with its head cut off, just like doing stuff, Just, I got to make money. I got to do this. I got to do that. And, the time I spent over the last October to now, and even kind of prior to that, I took a long hiatus from my podcast. I took a long hiatus from a lot of stuff that I was doing. And what I learned in that during that time, and that wasn't easy. Like I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. I don't think that was necessarily like the best way to go about doing it. But I needed it. It was super necessary for me to turn everything down to zero. And I've had a handful of ameliorations of this process because I've for so much of my life, I've just lived in chaos and the chaos of just going.
We're addicted to it.
Yeah, right. And so over the last year, really doing that, like turning it totally down to zero, where my days literally looked like waking up, meditating, having a cup of coffee, reading a book, drawing in a notepad, seeing what comes up, toiling with what happened to my life. How did I get here? I was on top of this mountain, 3 years ago or whatever, but just sitting with that and forcing myself to do nothing, but just be with what's going on, be with this interesting feeling of what does it feel like to do nothing? And I would have these kind of spurts of oh, I need to do my pod. I gotta, there's this part of me that's like, dude, what are we doing?
Yeah. You're
You're
blowing it.
Yeah. And I really just spent time in fucking stillness, quiet, inaction. And some really interesting things came out of that. One being, I really love to do work. I really love to fucking get my hands dirty, man. I love to be doing meaningful work, whatever that looks like, That could look like, clearing out the bamboo and loading up the wheelbarrow and walking it 100 yards to the fire pit, That could look like a whole lot of things. That could look like doing a podcast. That could look like posting something meaningful on Instagram. That could look like a whole lot of things. But what I learned in that was, okay, work is really important for me. I want to do really meaningful, purposeful work. I want to do work that fucking fires me up. It's important for me to be on the field, as it were. That was something a good buddy of mine said to me. And one of my mentors, actually. It was my mentor said this to me, and a good buddy of mine echoed it years later. But my mentor said, Eb, the only way we learn is being on the field. You don't learn fucking standing on the sidelines. You learn in being in the game, experiencing it. We could read all the books, we could do all the stuff, but if you're not in the game, dude, you can't really learn it. You can't grow. And then years later, when I was in this phase of total inaction, stillness, quiet, one of my good buddies, one of my best friends, he goes, Eb, I think it's time for you to get back on the field. And I was like, yeah, I feel that. I wasn't quite sure yet because I was honestly, man, I went through a big moment of being totally disillusioned with doing my podcast. While my podcast has been really the bread and butter of everything I've ever done and created in life after football, honestly, I was like, man, fuck that. Everybody has a podcast. Everybody's an influencer. I'm tired of it.
You
I
got to play
can't
all
do
these
it.
games to grow it
Yeah,
and
I'm
just all
like,
this
dude,
stuff.
fuck this, But there was something in me that's like, well, okay, all right. I honor that, dude. I respect that feeling and perspective. But, Eb, dude, this is one of your gifts. And people love it. I'd have all the time people in my inbox going, Eb, when's the next pod? Miss hearing you, dude. I'm like, I'm done. I would never go there. I would just be like, the pod's on hiatus, but because something in me is just like, it's part of who I am, what I do. So I spend all this time, and then, one day it just starts. I'm in meditation, man. It's like, okay, let's do a podcast tomorrow. Just gonna do a pod, and I did it. I just started doing it, and some momentum started building, man. I recorded that one podcast. It's the Back in the Saddle on YouTube, and I just thought, you know what? I want to spend my time doing things that are driving me forward in the direction of, nothing really new because, I've spent plenty of time in prayer and conversation with God and Spirit going like, well, what do you want me to do, man? Like when I played football, that was a divine inspiration. I got a download. I got a vision of me playing in the NFL. I did it. I knew how to do that, and then after football, it came to me, start this podcast, do this thing, and it was like, teach yoga, go back to your roots, get certified as a yoga teacher, fucking teach yoga, teach breathwork, bring these tools to people. Okay, I can do that. And then you get to the other side of it, and, life is happening and the movie goes on. You go, wait, but I thought I was going to do that and something was going to happen, man, and nothing happens. Like, all right, well, and, I get disillusioned and I think, what's the point? And I'm in the throes of my humanity and all these things are going on and I've got to, oh, okay, I'm back on my knees again. Here I go. I got to surrender to the moment and get this squared away. Divine order. Let me take care of myself so I can see what's next. And all the while, it was like, yeah, podcast still the way. Working with people still the way. Nothing's changed, So to answer your question, I think that because I recognize that, man, and I want to build an empire too. I don't. We can all. It's maybe not an easy decision to make, but it's easy to be the monk in the temple meditating for 16 hours a day, and you don't have to pay bills because you're scrubbing floors and eating a bowl of rice. like if you want to be I want to have a family. I want to be in relationships. I want to fucking build, uh, an empire is a strong word, but let's fucking go with it. I want to build an empire, whether that's, fiscally oriented. Really, it's more culturally oriented. Like I want to create a thing, uh, a space, an environment, an atmosphere for people to connect with themselves and realize that they're not alone and that there's somewhere, there is something on the other side of the difficult time, through sharing my own story, my own experience, because I've known it, I've done it many times. I've walked through many fires, There's been many times where I've thought life is over, been on my knees on the doorstep of suicide and being willing to just take one more step, man. Pick up the phone, call somebody, reach out, touch another person, be seen, be heard, and go, okay, I can do this. I can give it one more day. And then something emerges, So I think that when I think it's really important for human beings to have work. And in the current place that we find ourselves in, that can get really convoluted in thinking your work has to be your purpose. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it's good to work. It's good to, pick up the lunch pail and the hard hat and go to work and make money and provide for your family. And then your purpose might be something that has nothing to do with money at all. If you can make your purpose in your work simultaneous and the same thing, great, good for you. But I don't think it has to be like that. I think work keeps us sane, to be honest. To be able to get up and go somewhere and be accountable to people and to a thing, whether it's something you created or something that you've decided is worthwhile to put your energy into. I think that's a struggle for people. When you're working a job that is building somebody else's dream that you don't believe in, that can be really hard. And you just have to decide, is it worth it? Is the reward or the risk reward worth it on the other end of do I feel like I'm able to be who I want to be, live in integrity and alignment with the things I want to do and how I want to live and what I believe to be right and good? Can I do that in the midst of working this job? If not, maybe there's something to consider there, but I think it's really good to have something to do. Simply put, that's not like some magical answer, but I think having been in a place where I'm not doing anything, I recognize how important it is for my sanity and well-being to be able to just pick up the lunch pail and go to work and do something with my time. And then, we find our purpose. Like for me, my purpose is really, man, just lighting people up, dude, everybody I come into contact with, it's dude, how can I I don't have to say anything special or be anything special, just being in the presence of another human, listening to what they have to say, and in some way, shape, or form, allowing them to feel like they're doing a great job as a human being, or that they're on the right path, or maybe that something needs to change. Either way, inspiring in them the light and power of the joy of living. It's man, what's better than that? And that you don't really earn a paycheck doing that.
Not many people do.
No, yeah, you can, but.
Well, dude, it's awesome, man, and it's been awesome just hearing your perspectives and stories, and I can certainly relate to a lot of them, and it's an inspiration that you just keep going, dude.
Thanks,
I think that's what a lot of us need to hear is it's par for the course to get your ass kicked.
Yeah.
And it's just about just taking that next step and honoring yourself in the process. And
no doubt, man, you're gonna get your ass kicked, dude. I started a podcast with Mike Tyson called Hot Boxing.
Sure, you got some stories from that.
Yeah. The thing that, to your point, just to close out with this on my end, the thing that really struck me about Mike is that dude has had his fucking ass kicked so many times. He's been flat backed by life more than most people experience in an entire lifetime, And the thing about Mike is he, for better or worse, he's been able to pick himself up, dust himself off over and over again and just take another step, and we all have that, we all are capable of that. It's inevitable. You're going to get your ass kicked. It's not going to be fucking sunshine and butterflies and champagne flutes all the time. It's going to be hard, man. There's a lot of hard, and then there's some good sprinkled in, there's some real joy and bliss in this thing too, but it's going to be fucking hard. And the most important thing you could do is just recognize that it doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean you're not good or not good enough. Just be willing to pick yourself up and take another step, man, because that's the real measure. It's like, because, dude, we're all going to experience challenges and difficulties. For whatever reason, it's just the way it goes. But can we just continue in that to pick ourselves up and move forward? You know, that's the real thing, man.
That's it.
Yeah.
So if people want to learn more about all the cool stuff you're creating, what do you got going on, and where can they do that?
Well, everything, great way to get in touch with me is on Instagram at EDS Britton. You can shoot me an email at contact@ebenbritton.com. I've got a course coming out, building a really cool community called the Athlete's Approach. That'll be launching in the next couple months. Really excited about that. That's basically like everything I've learned along the way, putting myself back together again. It's all the tools, techniques, ideas in a really fun and accessible program where I'll be with you the whole way through that. Yeah, that's about it, man. Check out my YouTube, my podcast, The Ebb and Flow.
Love it, man.
And yeah, man. Thanks, dude.
Yeah, it's been an honor, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely.